All right, today again I am starting with a 6 by 6 inch Frederick's red label canvas, and you could certainly do this on any size of canvas that you like. The first thing I want to do is sketch on my moon. You can do this freehand if you like, which is what I usually do, or you could get something large enough that is the size that you want your moon to be. So I have this roll of tape, just place it on there and trace around it. So I'm going to do that for you today. And to trace it, I'm going to use my black chalk pencil. So I'm going to place that. It doesn't have to be dead center. It can be off the side a little bit. It could even be, you know, part of the moon off of the canvas if you like. Just make sure I've got that secure, and then just lightly go around it. Doesn't have to be perfect back here because I'm actually going to have a shadow on my moon anyway. And then in my image that I'm using for reference, there's quite a bit of a shadow on the moon. I'm just going to kind of see if that happens naturally. I'm not going to worry about sketching that on right now. For now, I'm just going to worry about painting the whole moon. And so to do so, I'm going to use my 1/2 inch flat brush. I'm going to wet it in my jar and wipe it off really good on the edge. So I have some black and white left over from another painting, so I'm just gonna use that. I'm gonna load up with white, and to load our brush with paint, I hear a lot of people say, wow, it looks like you don't use very much paint. But the reason for that is the way I load my brush. So I'll pull a little bit of paint out, see I've got that glob on my brush, and then I kind of smash it. See how my brush opens up like a fan? When it opens up like a fan like that, it pulls the paint into the bristles. So I actually have quite a substantial amount of paint in my brush. Now, as I'm creating the edge, I'm going to use the very tip of my brush. If I use my brush like that to try and draw a straight line, it's going to be a very soft, fuzzy line. So remember, you always use the tip of your brush to get a crisp, straight line. Pull that out. And a little bit of that black chalk that I used is picking up and going into my moon, and that is perfectly fine because I'm going to add some black to it anyway. If I feel like there's not enough chalk getting in there, I can come in and just grab a little bit of black to get that going. Just get that all filled in. This is a really quick and simple painting. Sometimes it's nice to be able to just, you know, sit down and knock out a painting really quick. And so that's what this one is for. But, you know, you certainly could put a little bit more time and attention into some of the details. And if you did it on a larger canvas, you know, it leaves a lot of room for creativity, even though it's very, very simple. Add just a little bit more black back here. This is going to be kind of a shady area. See, I am going side to side. See how my line is soft? Because I'm pretty sure I'm going to have some kind of a shadow back there. But even if I decide not, when I apply the black for the background, I'll just use the chisel edge there, and it'll cover that. All right, let's start adding some shadows. So I'm going to use my number 8 filbert, and I did wet this in the jar as well. And I'm going to get some white. And again, see how I'm smashing it, how it's kind of fanning out? Pull it and smash it. And a little bit of black, not a ton. Remember that if you pick up too much black, you'll lose control of it. It will easily take over. So I'm going to start just kind of tapping that in this area. See how I'm just kind of bouncing my brush, just kind of tapping. Don't leave it in a circle though. Break it out. I'm going to take it over here, and I'll take it up here. And then I'm going to come in with my finger and just tap out any brush strokes or lines that I don't like. Helps to gently mix the color as well, doing that. Let's do that again. Kind of tapping that darker color, pull it out this way. Maybe down that way, and then just tap out some of those lines. I'm gonna get a little extra black. We'll get a darker spot down here. Now the white that I laid down in the first place is still wet. If you are concerned that yours is gonna dry sooner than than you want, and you're gonna have a hard time blending, just take a spray bottle before you begin and very lightly mist down the back of your canvas. Don't get it soaking wet so you have water dripping out, but that little bit of extra moisture will help keep your paint open longer. If something gets away from you, it's too dark, that is an easy fix. So don't sweat it right now. See, and I think kind of tapping it like that gives a look like craters also. A little bit more. Let's take say there's a crater right up here, kind of rounding the edge. And pull a little bit out that way. If you use way too much paint here, you're gonna have a hard time tapping it around. If the paint is very thick, you're almost gonna be like finger painting. You're gonna be really spreading that paint quite far. So don't get globs of paint here. You don't want globs of paint. Tiny dot more of black, see that? Can you see how much is loaded on there? Not very much, but I'm gonna darken that. Did you see the bug flying on the moon there? Little bug just flew in front of my painting. I know you tidy people who don't like paint on your fingers are probably saying, nope, I'm not gonna be doing that. But it will wash off so easily. Run your hands underwater for like 3 seconds and it'll rub right off. It won't stain your hands. It won't live there forever, I promise. Okay, let's add some white. So I just kind of wiped my brush on a paper towel. I didn't clean it. And I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna get a bit of white. See, I just kind of dunked into it that time. I'm gonna like lay down a little blob of it right there, right where I want it nice and bright. And then just break up the line. Don't be afraid to take it into the dark. That is perfectly okay. Oh, that was a bit much. Let's brighten it up right here. I'm not gonna spend a whole ton of time on this moon. We're gonna move on here pretty quick. I just wanna get a few brighter spots in. And then I think we're about done with the moon. I feel like this area is quite dark. More so than I like. So I just drop down a little bit of that white and then kind of tapping it into a couple of areas. I think I like that better. Let's get rid of that line. All right, I'm gonna go back to my 1/2 inch flat and I'm gonna load up with some black. So again, pull some out and kind of mush my brush in it. And I'm gonna use the tip of the brush. I think I have too much water in my brush. And just very gently carve around the edge of this moon. I'm not gonna go into it at all. Yeah, my brush is a little wet. Much better. Don't worry about reshaping your moon at this point. Just worry about getting a crisp line and filling in the background. Once you're done with that, you can stand back. I want you to stand as far back as you comfortably can. And then decide if the shape needs adjustment. But right now, don't make those decisions. Get right up to that white. There we go. think that this would be really interesting done in, you know, different colors than black and white. I almost did it in shades of orange and purple and yellow, but ultimately the simplicity and the cleanness of black and white is what called to me, and so that's why I went with that. I just love black and white. It's just so classic, you know, when it goes with everything. And all right, now let's decide if we're going to do a shadow over here, and I think I'm going to, but I have quite a bit of paint on my brush. If I start trying to overlap that edge, I'm going to lose a lot of my moon. So I'm going to start by laying it down in these blank areas, avoiding the edge of my moon for now. Get you into a different position there so you can see what my brush is doing. I'm not going to be putting full pressure on my brush. If I press flat, I'm going to deposit a ton of paint. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to use the tip of my brush very gently, side to side, and that's lightly going to start covering the edge of the moon, because where my shadow is, I don't want a hard line. You know, I do want a hard line around the front, right? But I don't want a hard line on my shadow. Still trying to clean up that shape. There we go. It's very gently back and forth. My brush is not bending. Just back and forth over that edge. And I think I need a little extra water because I'm getting a bit of canvas. So let me show you how much water I'm going to get. I'm just going to dip my brush just gently into the water, shake that off, and then on my paper towel, I'm just going to touch. Let it absorb some of that, because I don't want it to be soaking wet. See, really all I did is kind of reshape that edge, kind of make it not quite so round as the front side. And that'll make it look like there's a bit of a shadow there. And the line that I have, it's not much softer, but it is a little bit softer than the front. See if you can tell there. The line is a bit softer than over here. I do have a couple spots over here that are just a bit wobbly. Let's clean those up and then we'll move on. This would be a really cool painting to do on a gigantic canvas too, I think. You know, like a big canvas that you would hang behind your couch or something. Nice statement piece. All right, let's add our trees. And so I'm going to use my long liner brush. I did wet this in my jar, and I've got a little extra drip of water on it. I'm going to come into some black paint and mix in there really well. Get a nice fluid version. Roll my brush so it's fairly sharp pointed, and I'm just going to start adding some trees. So I'm going to start outside of my moon, and again I'm pointing my brush down just like we talked about on the last painting. You know, point your brush down, press it almost flat, kind of let it get herky-jerky as it comes up, and there's a tree branch. Don't try to control this brush too much. You know, let it be crazy. That's part of the charm that you get from using a long liner. Those long bristles are kind of hard to control, to make do very, very specific things. Especially if you're not overly practiced with them. If you're really practiced with them, you can make it do anything you want. But I think it's really fun to just kind of see what it wants to do and let it do it itself. See how I'm kind of bouncing my brush as I go. Getting these little tiny lines. And my tree branch, my bark is all jagged, and I like that. I'm not gonna worry about that. Let's do another one over here. I'm really just kind of letting my hand shake and bounce. Don't be afraid to let it do crazy things. Because here's the thing, this is a creepy Halloween scene, right? So we don't need smooth, delicate trees with, you know, very beautiful shapes. We like these little jerky, crazy guys. Let your tree branches cross over each other. That's always super interesting. We can pull up little bits here. Spend as much time as you want making these crazy tree branches here. You can make as many as you want. And let them get tangled and lost in each other. There's no reason that you have to be able to look at a branch and tell exactly where it comes from and exactly where it ends, and you know which branch it's attached to, which tree it's attached to. And also, I know that my white is still wet, so I'm getting a bit of, you know, some of the white down here, but that's okay because I can cover that up, you know, when we're done. I'm not worried about it. Remember in the last video when we did a tree, how I said, don't be afraid to get in here and just make these little tiny, you know, just almost randomly little scratches of branches. That is okay. Get in here and do that. There we go. Halloween is such a good time to paint trees with such personality. Not that trees in the spring and summer don't have personality, but I feel like trees without branches, or trees without leaves, you know, the branches are almost like their personality. If you can see that the branches are very smooth and elegant, then, you know, it kind of gives that feel to the tree, as well as the whole scene around it. But if your tree has very jagged and, you know, twisty branches, then I feel like that kind of helps the scene as well. I'm gonna pull maybe just, they could be like little grasses or something. Just to break up this bottom edge a bit. It's not important. If you don't feel like you need to do that, don't do that. It's your painting, you do it how you want to do it. Okay, I think I'm happy with my trees. Let's do our birds. Now I'm gonna stick with my long liner still, but you can do it with whatever brush you're comfortable with. The one thing I don't want you to do here is get too detailed with these birds. They're very small, they're very distant. All we need is a general bird shape. So I will show you on my palette what I'm gonna do. I'm taking my brush, I'm just gonna dunk straight into my black. So I have a little bit of a ball on the end. See, it's a little bit of a clump. To do a bird, I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna put my brush down where I want the bird's head, kind of push just a little bit, and then drag out a little tail. Maybe a tiny little beak right there. That's really it. You can give it a longer tail. You can change the position that the bird is sitting. You know, let the brush stroke kind of dictate what the bird looks like. Don't you try to dictate what the bird looks like. So I've got some paint there. Let's start here. And we'll give it a little beak. There's a bird. And just add them all over. I'm not even getting more paint because the more paint I have on my brush, the bigger the bird is going to seem. As the paint starts to wear off, I'm going to be able to get these smaller birds that seem much more distant, and they can sit on these little tiny branches. And if a bird looks weird and you decide, oh, I don't like that bird at all, then just make it bigger. I don't like that bird at all, so we'll make him a little bit bigger. Much better. Make them all face different directions. Oh, he kind of looks like a chicken. There we go. add as many birds as you like. Look at that. I just insinuated a bird just with the tap of my brush. Just kind of that was really it. A little point on one end and we'll call it a bird. A little firmer pressure there to get a bigger bird. Lighter pressure there to get a very small bird. Man, I could make these birds all day. I think just a couple more though and we'll call it done. Back to my 1/2 inch with some black, and I'm just going to clean up this bottom edge where I dragged some of that white in. And then I think we're going to call it done.